immortality or living forever. I'm reporting here from RAADFest 2020, last day, and that was the topic of today, immortality forever. I'm Ines O'Donovan, editor-in-chief and creator of the Gennady magazine, and I have been looking for 3 specific topics today that I want to share with you now. So, number 1 was immortality. How would a future without aging, a future of immortality look like? Number 2, could you afford to be immortal? Or maybe, can you afford not to be immortal? And last but definitely not least, what are some of the tips you can use today to experience your happiest, healthiest, most amazing forever? So let's dive in. Question number 1. How would a future without aging, a future of immortality look like? So there was a little bit of talk and different speakers had different opinions, and I have kind of created my own version of that. So that's a bit of an adaptation and with my own input, but I see 3 stages. So I think there is, on one side, is like an intermediary phase where we transition from the current stage, from the current sick care system to a healthcare system, a system that is more about prevention. So that would be stage 2, prevention. And then in the next level, at stage 3, I think only then we can get into an ageless system, into a system of immortality. So let me dive a little bit deeper on each of those. So currently we have a sick care system. I mean, there is no denying what we experience is not a healthcare system, it's a sick care system. So how does that show? It is reactive. So it's basically we only act, or doctors, the medical system only react once we show symptoms, once we are sick. And for a lot of diseases, especially age-related diseases, that is very late in the process and it can be deadly. So yeah, it's not the best system. And then in addition to that, most of the treatments that we experience today, there are like one-size-fits-all gunshot approaches, as Sergey Young, an investor, mentioned, because we don't really adapt it to individuals at this stage yet. Let's just throw it out. It tends to work for a lot of people, so let's just see if it works for this person. And it might or might not. So this is the way it works right now. Then also what we experience right now in this current sick care system is that as a disease, as a symptoms comes up, basically we are being treated one disease, one symptom, one problem at a time. There is very rarely an overall approach. The problem is, especially as we age, damage accumulates and diseases tend to show up more, and some diseases show up at the same time, and then it becomes very problematic. In this transition phase, we can have some treatments. Well, some of them are not available yet, but some of them are, like stem cell treatment in theory is available that can help us to deal with some of the problems. Growing organs, like at the moment a lot of organs have to be donated, and in many countries there are just not enough donors. So at the moment, like, yes, there is research going on, and labs have started to grow organs that are then transplanted. there's also another trial where actually your own organs are grown in your own lymph nodes, in your own body. I mean, depending on the size of the organ, that might look a bit strange, but it's one way into the future. And it's one way of healing, or maybe not healing directly, but replacing what has been damaged. And then we are starting, or have started, with gene therapies, as Liz Parrish has pointed out, and she's very active, obviously, in this area, and a great advocate. And she has done another one. She has done several treatments in 2015, and she seems to have done some again, and she looks absolutely glowing and vibrant. And she's not saying anything yet, but actually, what she has been doing takes us into the next stage, into stage 2, into prevention, because she is healthy. But she wants to take it a step further. She wants to actually slow aging, stop aging, and maybe even reverse aging. So what happens at that level 2 in the prevention stage? It becomes more proactive. So not waiting until symptoms show up, but actually see, okay, what could I do? Like, for instance, like lifestyle is, for most of us, the biggest problem. It's kind of like almost all of the problem. And if we can work on that, then already we can avoid a lot of diseases. And if we are being proactive, we see, okay, very early on, there are some biomarkers that might lead to certain diseases, then let's act very early on. Proactive, personalized. So, and at the moment, doctors don't really have the opportunity the way the system works. And that's why it's a sick care system. It's not a healthcare system. It's not focused on prevention. So doctors are not being taught how to help to prevent diseases. And that also includes all those gunshot approaches and not so much personalized. There are a few doctors, especially in the area of functional medicine, who have started to be much more personal, but it's still a long way to go, because a doctor can't know it all either. There's so much going on every day, and it's impossible. So we also need AI, artificial intelligence, in order to become truly personalized, in my opinion. Of course, like in the prevention stage, we try to identify potential for diseases very early on, so that we can treat them very early on. And maybe we get at that stage to treating several diseases very early on with one treatment. Instead, like you remember, in the sick care was one treatment basically per disease, or maybe several treatment for one disease. Maybe because if we can get in early, we can use one treatment to avoid a lot of diseases. And of course, I mean, if there's a problem, then we still need regenerative medicine. We still need basically healing those symptoms. And once we are basically super healthy, we prevent diseases, then we automatically live longer already. We might not be at the stage of being ageless and immortal, but we will be getting there. And that is then the stage when it's really very proactive. It's basically continuous. It's personalized. It's about rejuvenating the body. And there can be some transient therapies. There can be some that are permanent. So it's a bit out there for the time being, but it's actually possible. So Aubrey de Grey said, one of the problems at the moment is that people believe in many, many myths about life at old age, about aging as such. And I think that a lot of that comes from the fear about like how immortality, how a very long life could actually look like. So I believe it is now, right now, we need to start thinking about how could an immortal life, an ageless life look like? And what can we do? What can we expect? How can we explore this? how can we design it in a way that works for us, that we want? If we're just thrown into it, it's much more difficult to deal with it than starting very early on to explore this. And this is one of the reasons why I'm conducting the interview series about the future of aging with leading researchers, entrepreneurs, and visionaries. And there are a lot of topics we do need to explore. So there are things like, what does it, when I can live a very long time, what does it mean for relationships? What does it mean for family life? What does it mean for my work life? Like, do I study once and then basically I do that for 400 years? Or how often do I change? Do I go into completely different industries? How often do I take, is there a retirement? Maybe, probably not. Maybe there are many retirements in between. So these are all things to think about. There's also about like the power. How is power divided in the world, basically, from the smallest to the biggest level, to the highest level? What about ecology, economy, equality? And there's so many more things, but I think one super crucial one is, what about the choice to die and when to die? I think this is one of the biggest challenges we are facing, and one that will be mega discussed because there are very, very big differences in opinions. But if we do want to get to immortality, it is something we need to talk about. So just to give you an idea how much time we have, Jose Cordeiro, he mentioned in his presentation that by 2045, we can achieve biological immortality. So that's only another 25 years. So let's start thinking. Question number 2. Can you afford to be immortal? Or maybe, can you afford not to be immortal? What do you think? I would love to hear your opinion, but I can't see your answers now. So let me just share what I learned from the conference today. Yes, so you can afford it already, even now. So, and of course, as with any type of investment, it is best to start investing early, and that is time, money, anything basically. And I thought that Natasha Vita-More had a very interesting approach that she shared today, a super longevity portfolio. So she mentioned 3 different portfolio strategies, it's like conservative, moderate growth, and high risk aggressive. And so on the conservative side, you can think about things like things that either don't cost anything, like fitness, but it could also be like nutrition, supplements, etc. And that goes all the way to the high growth and risk, and that's where I would put cryonics. So it's basically preserving your body in like for, depending, 20, 50, 100, who knows, many years, until there might be, for instance, treatments for certain diseases available, or simply that where they might be able to wake up your body and everything is so evolved that they can just keep you alive forever. Let me just share the percentages that Natasha recommended. Of course, she said diversify. As with any investment portfolio, you want to diversify. You want to have a little bit of everything. But of course, depending on your own health status and on your age, that will change. So she recommended for somebody who is healthy, 20 to 40, about that, she recommends invest 75% into conservative strategies, 20% into moderate growth, and 5% into high risk aggressive things. Then if you come to what she calls mid-max lifespan, that is between 40 to 75, this changes a little bit. She says basically 20% into conservative, 70% moderate growth, and 10% into high risk aggressive. That changes quite dramatically then when you get to what she calls the nearing max life expectancy, which is like about 75 to 100 plus, and or if somebody is not healthy. And there you want to put as much as possible into the basically high risk aggressive strategies, 80%, and that leaves 10% for moderate and 10% for the conservative side. So let's just briefly talk about money, because yes, money is a concern, and there is the belief that basically only rich can afford it. And yes, at the moment, it's well, you can afford it potentially, especially when you're starting very early. But of course, if something is relatively new, you need somebody to use it, and that's just like, that's economy. If there's only very few, it does cost more, and it needs to be tested, and once it becomes more widely available, it gets cheaper. So in some way, I think you can be very happy that there are people there who are spending all that money, the big money, to actually test it out for you. So be happy about that. But Rudy Hoffman, he was talking basically about using insurance, specific insurance, for instance, for cryonics, in order to afford, at the end of the day, to preserve your whole body in cryonics. So at the moment, and I looked it up, so it costs about like a minimum of $200,000 at the moment to have a full body cryonics. And this could start from paying, if you use an insurance, this could start from paying a few $100s per year when you're in your 20s to a few thousands once you're in your 70s. So yes, there's quite a big difference, but the earlier the better. And it is affordable. So what about the question, can you afford not to be immortal? I think it's too early to answer that question. We just don't know enough about how this will look like and what we're going to do, etc. So it is too early to answer that question. We'll find out in 10, 15 years. We will know so much more that hopefully we can answer that question at that stage. Let me come to number 3, question number 3. This was about, of course, specific tips and ideas. I'm always looking for something that you can really put into practice right away. So what are some of the tips and ideas you can use today to experience the best, happiest, healthiest, most vibrant forever? And there I use primarily what the hosts and organizers have shared, James Strole and Bernadeane, in their presentation. And first and foremost, it is about mindset. And I mentioned that earlier on. And I was like, what we believe basically is going to happen. So we can create some self-fulfilling prophecies if we think negatively, but also if we can think positively. So Bernadeane, for instance, said, that's a quote, "Get out of this stinking thinking." I like that quote because, yes, a lot of the thinking we have nowadays stinks. And it's based on old beliefs. It's based on things that are often often come from fear. They come from experiences that might not have been very pleasant. It's often based in not being able to think creatively about the future and not being able to think like with optimism about the future. So get out of this stinking thinking. Also, and I think it was James who said that, close all exits to death. So basically, if you don't even see death as an option, then that changes the way you think about life, the way you think about aging, the way you think about death. Because if death doesn't exist, if that's not an option, then you try to make the best out of who you are and what you do, right? Also, take a stand, say what you feel, have the guts to do that. This is something we are experiencing a lot in the community of anti-agers, and especially in the community of the immortalists, because they are often ridiculed. And it's like, yeah, whatever, what a fool, and things like that. So it's just like, okay, take a stand. Hey, sorry, this is what I believe in. And you probably want to get rid of those people who are not with you, because they're just pulling you down and they pull you into their way of thinking, and that might then become again that self-fulfilling prophecy that you do not want. So try to create the space, open up the space, meet the people who are alike, who think positively, who believe in a great future, and who want to experience more, who want to enjoy life more, who want to have the best life ever. And be inclusive. So yes, there are many people who think in different ways, and that's okay. And one sec. Sorry. It's good to have different ways of thinking, but let's not think in a negative way. Let's focus on what's positive, on the opportunities we have. So, and of course, take action. I mean, it's all good to think all the great stuff and to be positive. But if you're not taking action, then nothing will happen either. So you need to bring both together. It's really important. Be kind. Be kind to yourself and to others. And it really starts with being kind to yourself. Because if you're not kind to yourself, then it's very difficult to be kind to others. Be patient with yourself. Start early. Start wherever you are. If you didn't have a chance to start early, start right now. Don't expect change to happen immediately. I mean, you have been living for several decades. Assuming you're not a teenager listening to this right now, but even then you have lived more than a decade. So, but during those decades, you have accumulated problems, you have accumulated damage, you have accumulated different ways of thinking, of experiencing life. So be kind with yourself, be patient, and just watch and change over time. Also learn to walk free of stress. So we are all under tremendous amounts of stress, and even like in these times, even more so than before, if that is anyhow possible. So we need to walk free if anyhow possible. Yes, we will still have the stress around us, but, and that's what all the research shows, it is your perception of that stress that actually influences your body and your mind. So, and you have probably experienced it. There's one thing, like let's say somebody is in a car and it's just windows down and it's just like blaring very loudly with the music, and it might be music you don't like. So it might stress you, but somebody else in the next car is completely, who cares? And that is with everything in life. So changing the perception of stress is one way, or it's probably the most important way, of walking free of stress and not letting it get to you. And of course, one other way is meditation. So these are all the tips I had to share with you. These are all the things that I have been over the last days experiencing. This was my third summary because, of course, yes, there were 3 days of the conference. So if you haven't seen the other ones, go back. Day 1 was all about super immunity. Day 2 was about age reversal. And now today, the last day of RAADFest 2020, was about immortality and living forever. I wish you all the best. I wish you the most amazing forever. And even if you do not want to live forever, the most amazing and healthy and fabulous, exciting, happy tomorrow. See you next time. Bye bye.